Welcome everyone, my name is Rigel and this is a recap of Matchday 1 of the FIFA World Cup 2026. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I did not watch every single match, so some of these recaps are based on the opinions of those who have, but I have tried my best to gather as many opinions as possible because, admittedly, I'm not the best at identifying players that stood out. So, this is a collection of opinions that I've seen online, plus some of my own that I personally observed. So, this was match day 1 of the FIFA World Cup 2026, and we definitely saw some shocking results, suffice it to say, but there were also some very expected results. But let's start with the very first match, which is a rematch of the opening match of the 2010 World Cup, Mexico 2, South Africa 0. Now, this was a very, very chaotic opening match. We saw 3 red cards, which is kind of absurd considering at the last World Cup, and throughout the entirety of the competition, there were a total of 4 red cards, whereas we got 3 here in one match. A lot of us wondered since then, that was every match after this also going to be so harsh, so strict, so chaotic? And the answer is no, but we'll get into that. But we got a pretty early goal, you can see here. Quinones, shoot, I accidentally followed someone else's pronunciation. Quinones, that's the correct way to say it in Spanish. This was off of a really bad transition, or rather, like the South African keeper trying to send the ball to someone. We'll get to that someone in a second. But the keeper was arguably one of the better players for South Africa this time. Ronwen Williams is he's good at what he's doing, and honestly, I think he might have been one of the better in the starting 11 at the very least. But Ronwen Williams was trying to basically send the ball to Sitole, but Sitole lost the ball very quickly, and not even 30 seconds later, Quinones takes the ball, scores, and it's 1-0 early into the game. And then after that, we didn't really get that many goals. There were a couple of chances, and I think Mexican fans would have definitely thought that they would have won this, or they could have won this by more than just 2-0. There were a couple of chances, but there weren't any more goals scored in the first half. And then we go into the second half. Oh yeah, quick diversion about the hydration breaks as well. Yeah, I don't think anyone likes them other than ad agencies, because it just completely kills the momentum of any team that currently holds the momentum. And you can argue that sure, maybe it makes the game a little more unpredictable, but it still ruins the rhythm. And I think again, I really don't know how many people really like this this whole hydration break thing, other than ad agencies and Johnny Infantino, clearly. But also, even the commentators from like FIFA themselves, or just other like broadcasters and stuff, they have also been calling the breaks controversial. And sometimes it's just complete BS. Like, why are you having a hydration break when it's pouring outside? Why are you having a hydration break when the game is being played indoors, with air conditioning and everything? So, yeah, it's just, I think that's definitely the worst novelty that's been introduced this World Cup. But anyways, we had the first ever hydration break, or first ever official hydration break. They were already kind of trialing hydration breaks in like friendlies leading up to the World Cup. But anyways, in the first half, we didn't have any more goals after the one from Quinones. And then in the second half, early into the second half, Sitole got red carded, and so he has to be whatever the opposite of man of the match is. He flop of the match, I don't know, but yeah, he got a red card, he got sent off, and he also contributed to the first goal for Mexico, that is. And then while after that, we got Raul Jimenez, who scored the second one. I want to say it was a set piece. I honestly don't fully remember at this point, and yes, that does say 6-7. We'll get back to that in the next match, but yeah, Jimenez, Raul Jimenez, he went through so many things. I think he actually missed the 2018 World Cup for Mexico, but after this game, this is the opening match for both Mexico and South Africa, and Raul Jimenez has scored his first ever World Cup goal, and you just gotta feel good about that, right? And then later on into the game, Zwane also got a red card. I'll be honest, I can't remember exactly the circumstances for that one. And then near the end of the game, Cesar Montes got a red card as well. And frankly, it was a pretty stupid challenge. I think it was like Mbokhazi or Mokoena or something like that who was running the other way. Cesar Montes just tried to tackle him basically and got red carded for that, and now he's missing at the very least the next match for Mexico, which is a shame according to people who know better than I do the role of Cesar Montes in the defense of Mexico. But I would say Mexico did well to start off their World Cup campaign. So let's move on to this next match, which was South Korea versus Czechia. Now, going into this, no one knew exactly what to expect, really. This is a very strong Asian side, obviously, versus a pretty good European side. They're definitely not top tier or anything, but they had to really fight through the playoffs to get here. But yeah, there weren't any goals in the first half. You can, you can't really see here, but there weren't any goals in the first half. It was kind of, let's just say, not exciting. The ball was just being passed back and forth, back and forth. There weren't really that many major chances being generated. But then in the second half, despite a lot of the chances actually coming from Korea, the first goal was scored by Czechia, and how else would they score their goals but off of a set piece, right? Them and Bosnia, that's basically all they do. But yeah, it was off of a set piece. It was a corner kick, and Krejci heads it in. There's not much else to it, but Czechia leads for a little bit until in the 67th minute. Yes, you got a goal from Hwang In-bom, and then later on one from I can't remember the guy's full name, Oh Hyun-gyu, who actually came in for Sun Heung-min, but yeah, that was an assist from Lee Kang-in, and actually the second goal from Oh Hyun-gyu was actually assisted by Hwang In-bom. So yeah, and after that, there weren't any more goals. I think Czechia tried a little bit, but honestly, like I said, they really only score through set pieces these days. So yeah, there weren't many of those in the second half for Czechia. Although I just saw this, and I have to remind you of this person, Vladimir Tofal. His throw-ins are just absolutely insane. I'm not sure where he plays. I think he plays somewhere in the lower Premier League in England. No, actually, he plays in Hoffenheim. All right, but yeah, no, Tofal. If you saw the match, his throw-ins were absolutely insane. This crazy goal, actually, this was a throw-in from Tofal, pretty much perfectly into the center of the box, of the Korean box, and then Krejci heads it in, and boom, that was 1-0. And he had several other throw-ins like this as well. I will say some of the other players, like the star players of the match, or rather of the Czech team, didn't really feel that present, like Patrick Schick. I don't think he really did that much. Pavel Schultz as well. I don't think he did that much. Krejci scored the goal, of course. Tofal was insane for Czechia, frankly. But South Korea comes out on top with 2 goals and, frankly, just better play overall in the match. And that was the first day of World Cup games. So let's move on to the next day, where we had the other 2 host nations take to the stage. Starting with Canada 1, Bosnia-Herzegovina 1. Now, like I mentioned with Czechia, Bosnia is also a team that really primarily scores off of set pieces, and that's kind of exactly what happened. In the 21st minute, Kolasinac, I don't know if it was Kolasinac putting in the goal, but or rather like kicking from the side, but in the end it was Jovo Lukic, who is actually of Serbian origin, who actually gives Canada the lead. And for much of the game, it was actually kind of dominated by Canada, as you can see here. But they were really struggling to find a goal. I don't really think Jonathan David did that much, or Tajon Buchanan, to be honest. And obviously Alphonso Davies was kind of injured, or at the very least not completely fit for this match, so he didn't play. Although there was this funny thing where Alphonso Davies saw someone wearing a Davies jersey and then just kind of patted them on the back, and he was like, "Yo, cool jersey." And then the guy didn't even recognize that he was talking to, Alphonso Davies himself. But he didn't play in this. He was on the bench. But after that, they really struggled to generate chances, really big chances at least. Like I said, Tajon Buchanan, I don't think did that much. But in the 76th minute, Kyle Larin comes on for Oluwaseyi, and then just 2 minutes later, or even maybe like a minute and a half or something like that, he scores. And it's actually a really skillful goal to have. It takes an assist from Promise David, who I would say was definitely the superior David in this match. He takes an assist from Promise David, literally just spins around, shoots, and boom, there's a goal. I would also say that in this game, Bartarevic actually for Bosnia was also very good. He didn't have any assists or anything, but his work rate is absolutely insane. He was just running up and down the pitch, and that is kind of the modus operandi of the Bosnian side at the end of the day. They're not going to be very clinical at the end. And also Aiden Dzeko was not playing as well, in addition to Alphonso Davies. So this was kind of a little subpar, for both sides, I would say. I would say that Bartarevic did okay. I would say that definitely the man of the match, for me personally, it has got to be Kolasinac. Some really key saves that Kolasinac made for Bosnia. Bartarevic ran around everywhere, but he didn't actually do that much with it. Muharemovic as well, he also had a really good block at the end, near the end, I believe, and Katic, Dedic, they also did really well. Lukic obviously scored the goal. I think that's kind of why he's rated 8.0 here. But other than that, I don't think Lukic honestly did that much, if I'm being honest. But I also don't think Alabegovic really did too much. But that's really about it for this game. So let's move on to the other host nation, or the last host nation who hadn't played yet, and that's of course USA 4, Paraguay 1. Now, I think it's safe to say that not a lot of us expected this result, unless you're a delusional American USMNT fan. But this was a really astounding result. Not because the US won, I think that was kind of always expected, but the way that they won in such a fashion, the way that Paraguay looked, honestly kind of intimidated. But man of the match, I'm not entirely sure. Some people would say, Balogun, because he scored 2 goals, but honestly, I would say Pulisic. Actually, what would be my personal man of the match. He did really good. I think McKennie was all right. He was very aggressive for sure, but McKennie was all right. Tim Ream was okay. I think. Yeah, man of the match for me, probably Pulisic, even if Balogun did score 2 goals. I think he finished well, that's for sure, but a lot of the assists and stuff, I would say, definitely involved Pulisic one way or another. And oh yeah, we had this thing called yellow card cancelled, and then they actually gave the yellow card to the other side, which was kind of curious. But yeah, this was a really dominant performance for the USMNT. With an early goal, actually an own goal, because there was a lot of pressure being mounted by Pulisic and someone else. Maybe it was Tim Ream, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, Bobadilla for Paraguay accidentally. I don't know about accidentally, but he was pressured into creating an own goal for the U.S. and the U.S. take an early lead, but it would take a while. It would take until after the hydration break for another goal to happen, and again, it is on the side of the U.S. Balogun takes it, an assist this time from Pulisic. I can't remember the goals at this point. I barely watched the match. I was barely awake for this game. So yeah, Balogun scores from an assist off of Pulisic, and then at the very end of the first half, Balogun scores another one with an assist from Malik Tillman, and then in the second half, or rather the first half of the second half, does that make sense? Third quarter. That's what Americans want us to say. The third quarter of the game, not much really happened, but of course the US were still very aggressive, very dominant in their attack. No goals scored, but soon after the end of the hydration break, it would be Paraguay to score this time. This is off of Julio Enciso's assist. But he gives it to Mauricio, who scores off. It wasn't a set piece; it was just a regular goal. But the U.S. were kind of caught off guard with that one. But it was at that point that they thought maybe they could have a chance. But at the very end, Gio Reyna is subbed on for Malik Tillman, and then at the very, very end, at the 98th minute, he scores, and I think that kind of just completely crushed Paraguay's hopes of getting back into the game. And yeah, that was that. I think this was definitely the best host country performance out of the three. It wasn't a great game for Canada, if I'm being honest, and Mexico definitely feel like they could have scored more against a 9-man South Africa, but it is what it is. 2 of the 3 host countries come out with a victory, so now let's move on to the other groups, or rather, let's continue with Group B, where we had the first major shock of the tournament. Qatar won, Switzerland won. Now, I didn't watch this. I'll just be very upfront about this. But the feeling I get, the sense I get, was that Switzerland were being very wasteful and very, dare I say, dismissive of their opponents. Like, I think a lot of us expected before the match that Switzerland would probably destroy Qatar, like 3-0, 4-0, something like that. And I suspect they thought the same as well, because, as we've seen with previous matches in like friendlies and stuff, Switzerland can put 3 past Germany. If they can do that, who says they can't do that against Qatar? But in this game, they were just being wasteful. Everyone got a shot, but none of them really got too close. The Qatari goalkeeper did make some key saves. However, I think the theme of this game was really ultimately wastefulness and underestimating the opponents for Switzerland, and in the end it actually ends up being counted as an own goal, but actually I think that was more of a deflection, if anything. But Akram Afif didn't even have that good of a game. It was I can't remember who it was. Budiaf or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it was one of the Qatari players that wasn't Akram Afif, who came in. I think it was a set piece or something like that, or throw in, something like that. And then he came in, heads the ball in and off of a deflection off of Muheim, and it becomes 1-1 for Switzerland versus Qatar. And this is definitely the shock result thus far, as in terms of the stuff that I've been covering. It's not entirely sure why this is happening. This has happened to Switzerland. You could say it was the hot weather, but you have the hydration breaks for that. But yeah, this was not a great result for Switzerland, and now they'll be hoping to get some proper results off of Bosnia and off of Canada to top the group still. But now it's wide open, and if any of the other two that I mentioned, Canada and Bosnia, if either of them can win both games, then they could stand to top the group as well. And now the whole group is kind of, I don't want to say in jeopardy, but it's now definitely much more open than it was before, when we assumed that Switzerland would take 9 points and qualify top of the group, but that didn't happen. So now let's move on to Group C, where we had Brazil 1, Morocco 1. And I think it's safe to say that this is a fair result, but I would say that overall Morocco definitely looks like the better side, even without Aguerd and Azazuli. Azazuli got injured, I think, by Storloff, ironically enough, during the Norway friendly. But yeah, it ended 1-1. Both goals were scored in the first half. The first goal was from Saibari, who took the ball and just kind of outran everyone else. It was off of a counterattack sort of thing, and it was very well taken, and it wasn't an easy goal to take. It wasn't... it took a while to definitely break through Brazil in that sense, but not too long after that, although I think this was actually after the hydration break, Vinicius Jr. Puts in just an absolutely stunning, absolutely ridiculous goal, and I suspect that is what is going to be needed for Brazil to properly succeed in this tournament. Based on the current form, I don't think Brazil really have much of a chance of winning at all. They could, but it would take significant improvement from Ancelotti, from them, and especially considering as well that there's been reports saying that that Neymar isn't playing, at least for a group stage, and he probably, I'll be honest, probably won't help that much in the knockouts either. But yeah, Vinny Jr. scored a goal, a ridiculous goal from really far out. It was inside the box, but it was really far out still, and like with Egypt, I think they're kind of relying on individual talent here to really get things done, to really get the ball at the back of the net. But yeah, that was the last goal that was scored. The second half was kind of uninteresting. They subbed off different players, subbed on different players, and it didn't really make too big of a difference in my opinion. But yeah, that was Brazil versus Morocco. I think the name value makes it seem more exciting than it should be, and it was definitely higher quality football than you've seen from the likes of, say, Canada versus Bosnia. No offense. But ultimately, it didn't end in too many goals, as high-level matches of this degree tend to do. Then the other two countries in Group C played as well, where we had Haiti 0, Scotland 1. And it was a very, very hard-fought 1-0, let me tell you that. Even McGinn's goal that happened at the 29th minute right here, that's McGinn right there, John McGinn. I'll be honest, that was a very lucky goal, because it took several deflections, and if it hadn't been deflected at all, I think Placide, the Haitian goalkeeper, would have saved it. But it took several deflections, and that was how Placide couldn't save it, and in the end, it ended 1-0. But let me tell you, again, I watched this entire thing. This was so intense. This was so back to back. There were times when I think a shot from Haiti bounced off the frame or something like that, and obviously the atmosphere was intense. You've got Haitians and you've got the Scots, the Tartan army. The atmosphere was really intense in the stadium, but this was very end to back. I think almost uncomfortably so from a Scottish point of view. But people have noted that Steve Clark's style of play doesn't really work too well against a side as aggressive as Haiti. So hopefully they'll be able to do better against Morocco in a few days, I think, is the next match. But you had a bunch of subs. Lyndon Dykes, Finley Curtis, Kenny McLean. None of them really made too big of a difference, if I'm being honest. Isidore was okay. I wouldn't say he was amazing, but I would say definitely the highlights for me were Providence and Experience. These two on the side, they provided really, really good defensive, experience, pardon the pun, for the Haitian side, and I think they did really, really well to try to counter any attacks that the likes of Shankland or Che Adams might put forward. But other than that, on the Scottish side, McTominay was okay. He had one shot that went sort of over the bar. Angus Gunn was, I would say, okay, but not like outstanding or anything like that. I think the man of the match for Scotland for me has got to be Ben Gannon-Doak. Ben Gannon-Doak was absolutely brilliant. He was running up and down the pitch in kind of the same way as Bayraktarevic, but if Scotland wants to succeed in the next couple of games, they need Ben Gannon-Doak to be healthy. He is a key part of this Scottish offense, and I think a lot of the goals are going to come through him, if there are going to be any more goals as well from this point forward against like Brazil and Morocco and stuff like that. But Che Adams I think was okay again, but I think the man of the match for Scotland for me has definitely got to be Ben Gannon-Doak. And for Haiti, I would say Experience and Providence were really good as well. But that is about it for this very, very hard fought 1-0 for Scotland. I think some people expected this could be 2-0, 3-0, but of course in typical Scottish pessimistic fashion, I think a lot of people also joked that Scotland would be the first to lose to Haiti or draw to Haiti or something like that. But Scotland do now have 3 points, and I believe continue to be the first European side to have won a match on a clean sheet. But let's move on now to the next match, which I again did not watch, or rather I did try to watch. I think before I fell asleep, I think I heard the Iran Kunda goal. I think I saw the Iran Kunda goal and then I kind of fell asleep. But I'm now kind of just recounting what other people saw from the match based on, having watched the whole thing and having watched it while they're not, asleep. But this was in BC Place, Vancouver. This was Australia versus Turkey. It was very interesting because prior to the match, a lot of the Turkish players were being outwardly arrogant, saying things like, we are better than them, we can beat them, we should beat them easily or something like that. And on paper that is true, but don't say it out loud, right? But there was this one video going around where Australia's captain Jackson Irvine was just kind of chilling, and then on the other side Arda Güler was shouting in Turkish, basically, we are better than them, we can do this, or whatever. But they did not do this. And it was funny because if you look at the possession, a lot of it came from Turkey. But the defensive work being done by Australia was just absolutely crazy. You can see here Kunda had a goal. And again, this is another one of those where if Australia wants to succeed at the World Cup, they need Kunda healthy. They need Motore healthy as well. And yeah, it was a lot of Turkey trying to do stuff with the ball, and Australia just being really solid in their defense. So, yeah, there were a lot of shots, like 1.36 xG, 30 shots compared to 9 from Australia. But yeah, like with Switzerland, I would say like Turkey was definitely a little bit wasteful with their attempts. They were definitely out defended, or they were very well defended by Australia. You've got just really tall guys at the back, guys like Harry Sutar, who is can we find his height on here? No, we can't, I don't think. But he is like absolutely massive, and a lot of the backline are really massive as well. So they just defended for their lives, and they got the job done. So, you got... I don't think Motore really did too much in this game, but Kunda really, really good. He was really fast on the ball, is my understanding. Again, I watched the match kind of half asleep, and even then only the first half. So I'm really mostly relaying what other people have said and what I've been able to gather based on like consensus and stuff. But speaking of that, this guy, man, the man of the match was awarded to a goalkeeper, and this won't be the first time that this is happening in this World Cup. Patrick Beach. This was a really big call for Popovich to make. Patrick Beach, he plays for Melbourne City FC. He's 22. He plays in Australia, and this was a really big call to have him be the keeper instead of Matt Ryan, who plays in you can see here he plays in Levante. He had a good season there, but they actually, Popovich decided to call up Patrick Beach for the goalkeeper, and man, did he come through. Like, he made so many saves, and I think him along with another goalkeeper that I'm going to talk about in another video actually, those two, I think, after this World Cup may well not be playing where they are currently playing anymore. But we'll have to see what happens. But Patrick Beach made some really, really good saves. And yeah, they kept Turkey from scoring any goals at all. And now Australia versus USA, that is going to be fire. That is going to be fireworks. I highly suggest you tune in for that one if you're watching this before that match has happened, of course. A really solid, really tight defensive side versus a really strong offensive side. It's like unstoppable force meets an immovable object. But let's see what happens in that game. For now, though, let's go on to Group E, where we had Germany 7, Curacao 1. Now, I think if you're expecting anything less than a demolition, you would be delusional. Because this is Curacao, a side that literally lost to China coming into the World Cup. And if you lose to China, then what hope do you have against Germany, right? But no, actually, the first half was fairly competitive. Nemecha scored really early on, actually. I think that was a set piece. But not too long before the hydration break, Livano Comenencia scores for Curacao, and it was crazy. I think it took 1 or 2 deflections maybe, but Comenencia came into the box and he scored past Manuel freaking Neuer. Just imagine saying that to, your children or a compatriot of Curacao or something like that. Comenencia of Curacao scored past Manuel Neuer. Of course, this is not like prime Neuer, but still, he scored for Curacao, and there was a beautiful stretch of about 17 minutes when Germany and Curacao were level at 1-1. But then Schlotterbeck puts it in, and then it's 2-1. And then one of my friends who was watching, they were like, how the hell is this match 2-1 right now, going into halftime. But yeah, it wasn't going to stay that way, but I think Curacao had committed a penalty, or they gave a penalty to Germany. It was scored by Havertz, and it went into halftime at 3-1, and you're still thinking, okay, this might be possible. Maybe Curacao, if they might even be able to catch up, or at least make the score not look too ugly. But then Germany woke up in the second half, and you got goals from Musiala, you got goals from Nathaniel Brown, and then from Dennis Zundov, and then another one from Kai Havertz. And yeah, that was going to be it. And I think even near the end, Germany was still attacking really aggressively. So it could have been worse than 7-1, honestly. But come on, man. It's the first ever match of Curacao at the World Cup. Give them a break. They barely even, qualified over Jamaica. They didn't score in that game in Kingston during qualifying. It was a 0-0, but so yeah, give them a break. They're not particularly good, and this is not to denigrate them or anything. They made it to the World Cup. That's the most important thing. But I think going into this, a lot of us predicted that they would be by far the weakest side at the World Cup, and so far, unfortunately, that is correct. Maybe they'll be able to do something against the other opponents in their group. Obviously, I doubt it, but this is a really harsh first game to have at the World Cup, and they got destroyed Brazil style. So yeah, I think it's safe to say now that Curacao is as good as Brazil 2014. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, a very conclusive, a very decisive result for Germany. But now we move on to the other two countries in Group E, which is Ivory Coast 1, Ecuador 0. If you look at that scoreline, you'll think, oh, this was a boring game. This was the most exciting 1-0 that I've ever seen in my life. It was back to back to back to back to back. And no one was scoring anything for a whole 90 minutes. And, Ecuador, they have a strong defense. But Ivory Coast has a really strong attack as well. They've got guys like Amad Diallo, Gayla Doué. You've got, Nicolas Pepe, of course, Fofana, and also Kessié, kind of. I don't honestly think Kessié did too much in terms of attack, and obviously the star man Jan freaking Diomande. But yeah, Nicolas Pepe, I'll be honest, didn't do too much. I think he had a chance early on, but yeah. So this was a lot of basically Ivory Coast trying to break down Ecuador. Ecuador actually had a few chances of their own, to be fair. I think, yeah, Inter Valencia missed 2 or 3 shots. I think John Yeboah had one as well, I want to say, but it was mostly obviously Inter Valencia. He missed a couple of shots, but yeah, it was 90 minutes basically of them trying to break each other down, but Ivory Coast is solid in the defense. Ecuador is obviously solid in their defense, but yeah, it was kind of a, score-wise, it was a stalemate, but it went really back and forth. It was a really thrilling 0-0 until the 90th minute, when Singo makes just the run of his life, absolutely the run down a side for his life, and then he passes it in to Amad Diallo, who a lot of us were surprised Amad Diallo didn't start in this match. But yeah, he passes it to Amad Diallo. He just dribbles past a bunch of people, boom, and that's the goal. And Ecuador, who, might I remind you, arrived at the World Cup unbeaten for 19 games, have been defeated for the first time in 2 years by Ivory Coast at the World Cup. And that, I think, really, really goes to show that Ivory Coast is, to me at least, almost certainly the definitive third best team in Africa. The top two are, obviously going to be Morocco and Senegal, in whichever order that's for you to decide. But I think, if there were any debates about who was the best third, or rather the third best African side, I think that debate has been put to bed now. It's Ivory Coast. You could make the argument for Nigeria, but I think after this performance, it is very clear Nigeria fourth, maybe, and then Ivory Coast would definitely be third. And speaking of Nigeria, I do kind of miss their presence here. Like, I think given current form, I think they would absolutely beat South Africa. But they finished below them in qualifying, which is kind of infuriating. And they also lost to DR Congo in the playoffs and stuff. But I think, Group A would have been so much more interesting if Nigeria was playing instead of South Africa. But, it is what it is. You qualify. You need to qualify before you can play at the World Cup. Cough, cough, Italy. But, this was a thoroughly enjoyable game between Ivory Coast and Ecuador, and it ended 1-0 with Ivory Coast breaking Ecuador's 19-game unbeaten streak. And honestly, I think Ivory Coast can absolutely go and do some damage against Germany. So we'll have to see what happens, but Ivory Coast walks away with 3 points. And then we move on to Group F, where we had the headline match of the day, of course, Netherlands versus Japan. And this was another game where the first half was really not too exciting, like the Korea-Czechia game. Incidentally, that was also AFC versus UEFA. But this was there was not a lot happening in the first half, I'll be honest. There were a few chances, there were a few shots generated by Japan, but they couldn't really finish. But despite the lack of some of their guys like Mitoma, for example, Japan still looked really good. But in the second half, Van Dijk scores for the Netherlands. It was from Ryan Gravenberch for the assist. I think it was a set piece. I'll be honest, I don't remember. I think it was a set piece. Yeah, it says header right there. Yeah, it was a set piece. Virgil van Dijk scores for the first time in a while now. Actually, I don't remember the last time Netherlands, or rather Van Dijk scored for the Netherlands. But he opens up the scoring. But a few minutes later, Keito Nakamura scores as well with an assist from Kubo. Although I think Kubo actually got injured, so we'll see whether he's able to continue for the next game for Japan. But he was injured, but he did provide this assist. Nakamura equalizes the score, but then shortly after that, Crescencio Somerville, another assist from Gravenberch, actually, scores for the Netherlands. I believe this is actually his first goal ever for the Netherlands. He'd been playing in lower rated English clubs for a while, but he hadn't really scored for the Netherlands as far as I know. But Somerville scores, and now you're thinking, can Japan respond to this? And they do. If you go to the 88th minute, Daichi Kamada scores off of a set piece. And this must be very infuriating to the Dutch, because, how are you letting a bunch of short Asians beat you in a set piece, right? But there weren't any more goals after that, and the match ends even 2-2 to both sides, or rather, 2 to both sides. You get the idea. But no one comes out on top, and both of them come out with 1 point each, which is not the same situation that we had for the other two countries in this group. Sweden 5-2 Tunisia won. Oh man, like this was another game that I did not watch. I'll just be honest, but my understanding is that Sweden were just all over Tunisia. And ironically, the one player who scored twice for Sweden, Ayari, is half Tunisian. His father is Tunisian, I think, but prior to going to World Cup, he actually gave an interview where he said he actually actively supported his son. Ayari's father said he actively supported his son playing for Sweden instead of for Tunisia because Sweden had like the infrastructure, the support, and stuff like that. And it definitely showed in this match. You know, he scored early into this. You can go and look at the official highlights yourself, but there were some crazy goals. I would say actually the two goals from Ayari were probably the bangers of the match. You know, he's even the in a cruel twist of irony, the half Tunisian player is the man of the match against Tunisia. But Isak scored as well, Gyökeres scored as well, and then even who was it? Svanberg scored as well from an assist from Isak. Yeah, this was an utter demolition for Tunisia, and they fired their coach Lamouchi shortly after the match. And rumor has it, well, it's not a rumor, I'm pretty sure it's official now. The one to take on the job as the Tunisian coach is none other than former Saudi Arabia coach Hervé Renard. And credit to Rekik at least, who scored at least one goal for Tunisia, so they didn't, give Sweden a clean sheet. But still, Hervé Renard is now taking over the job of coaching for Tunisia, and let's see what they can do. Although I think goal difference wise, this basically immediately rules out Tunisia from actually doing anything in this group. But stranger things have happened. We'll have to see what happens from here. This was utterly dominant from the point of view of Sweden. This was a great way for them to start off their World Cup campaign, and now maybe they are hoping to do something against the Netherlands, or maybe Japan. So we'll have to see what happens there. And that is the end of this match day, or I don't really know, match game day? I'm not really sure. But let's move on to Group H. I'm actually not going to talk about Spain versus Cape Verde. I want to talk about it in a separate video, so stay tuned for that. So let's go to the other match in Group H, which was Saudi Arabia 1, Uruguay 1. Now, this was a really, really nervous match, a really nervy match for Uruguay, actually, not for Saudi Arabia, because Al-Amri scored for Saudi Arabia in the 41st minute, and they actually held that for quite a while. They subbed off a bunch of guys. Al-Jawair didn't really do too much. I'm not really sure what this goal was, but Al-Amri scored for Saudi Arabia. The goalkeeper as well, Al Owais, actually, he actually made some pretty good saves as well for Saudi Arabia. They just could not break through him. But in the second half, Maxi Araujo actually managed to scramble a goal back for Uruguay, and at least they started to sort of wake up a little bit in the second half. They were just being pushed around by Saudi Arabia in the first half. I think I heard something about them having to play immediately on the same day as them having arrived in Miami. So, there was maybe a little bit of jet lag or something like that. But they didn't really do that well. Uruguay didn't do that well in the first half, but in the second half, they started to wake up. They started having more of the ball and being more clinical with the ball. And that resulted in a goal for Maxi Araujo for Uruguay. Maxi Araujo, of course, playing in Sporting, and I think one of the key factors that led to the loss of Bodo Glimt in the Champions League. Yes, I still remember that game. But yeah, Maxi Araujo scores, equalizes for Uruguay, and they end level. And now Uruguay will be hoping to do something against Cape Verde, if not Spain. So that is going to be Group H for now. Again, I'll do a separate video for Spain versus Cape Verde. But now let's move on to Group G. I don't know why they have G below H, but yeah. This was another draw, just the third draw of the day, which was Belgium 1, Egypt 1. And honestly, Egypt could have probably won this one. Again, this was another one that I didn't watch. I think it was just too late for me. I just didn't feel like watching. Actually, no, I did watch this. This was 3 a.m. for me. I did watch it, but not entirely. It wasn't with any significant amount of interest, let's just say. Like, I watched the first half, or a lot of the first half, and then in the second half I kind of just turned off. Not literally, I still had it playing in the background, but I was doing something else. And for the first goal, it was from Ashur, and Ashur actually also had a bunch of other chances as well. So I would say he is probably man of the match for yeah, he is actually man of the match overall, which is surprising to me personally. But yeah, Ashur actually had a bunch of chances, but he only really finished one. I think if he finished another, this would have been a very different conversation. But the equalizer for Belgium, it says here, is an own goal, but you could also say that there was an assist by the aura of Lukaku. I didn't coin that phrase, by the way, but basically Lukaku came on, and not even a minute later, he kind of scores. I think it was a free kick or something like that. But yeah, everyone was moving forward, and a lot of players, including Hani, were like sort of marking Lukaku. But in doing so, they Hani accidentally created an own goal, and Lukaku's aura and his being marked led to the second goal in the match, and the first goal for Belgium, which led to this match being 1-1. And now this is the match that I didn't watch, and now I'm kind of regretting not watching it, because, you know, purportedly this was the best match of the group stage so far. But this was Iran 2, New Zealand 2. Again, I did not watch this, but this was apparently back-to-back. I did watch one of the goals. I think it was the second goal for New Zealand. But yeah, it is funny that one goal was so early on by Elijah Just, and both goals were actually assisted by Chris Wood. The second goal, oh my god, Chris Wood's play in that goal, you know, and that assist, that was just absolutely insane. You know, he dribbles, that's not maybe the right word, but he had incredible ball control in that goal before he sends it on to Elijah Just, who scores the second goal for New Zealand. So yeah, I think from the looks of this, I think this was probably like a set piece or something like that. But yeah, Ramin Rezayan, if that's how you pronounce it, he now has a goal and an assist in this match against New Zealand, and this was a surprisingly back-to-back match. And Elijah just scored both matches, or rather both goals for New Zealand. And this was also a significant match because you see this player, Sarpreet Singh, he is the first ever player of Sikh descent to play at the World Cup, so that's really cool. And I think probably the highest ranked South Asian player, or outwardly South Asian player at the world stage, playing at the World Cup. So I think that's a really significant thing. Mehdi Taremi was there. Obviously, Azmoun was not in the squad because of political stuff, but yeah, Chris Wood did really well. I think Elijah Just as well. Obviously, he scored the 2 goals. But yeah, this is a really interesting match, and it'll be interesting to see what they do next in this group against Belgium and against Egypt. So yeah, that is going to be Group G. After that, let's move to Group I. And yeah, let's just say yesterday was a day full of really decisive results. First, let's start with France versus Senegal, or rather France 1, Senegal, France 3, Senegal 1. And like a lot of the other games, this was not very interesting in the first half. Not much really happened. I think Senegal actually generated quite a few chances. If we look at the stats here, in the first half, 0.03 xg for France and 0.43 for Senegal. And like I mentioned, Senegal actually had more shots than France in the first half, and 0.03 xg. They were just not getting anywhere close to the box. But Senegal couldn't really capitalize on that. They didn't score in the first half. So yeah, really, you can see just from this figure alone, not much was happening in the first half. But in the second half, it seemed like everyone just woke up. France went from 0.03 to 1.75 xg. And Senegal also scored as well, but it was crazy because Mbappe scored in the 66th minute. If you watch the replay of that, it is a ridiculously good pass from Michael Olise. It was so good that, even though I was supporting Senegal, I honestly couldn't get mad at that. That was just such a skillful pass, but at the same time, I feel like the Senegalese defender should have done better to prevent that long pass from being made in the first place, but it is what it is. It was a really good pass from Michael Olise, and Kylian Mbappe just runs and scores the first goal. And then you can see here, Ibrahim Mbaye actually gets subbed on for Ismail Sarr. Ismail Sarr actually had a really, really good chance, a practically open goal right before the end of the first half, but he skies it. He sends it over the top of the crossbar, and I just don't know what he was doing, and so I was just glad to see the back of him. So, yeah, Ibrahim Mbaye came on for Ismail Sarr, and then Bradley Barcola was subbed on for Dembele, who, I will be honest, was kind of NPC-esque in this match. He didn't really do much in this compared to even the game against Ivory Coast in the friendly. Dembele just didn't really do much here, in my opinion. So, I was fine to see him go, but as I was just as I was tweeting, Deschamps will do anything but sub on Ryan Cherky, Barcola just goes and scores. So, this was from Adrien Rabiot, an assist, but Barcola just scores soon after that, and I was like, okay, fine, Deschamps, I'm eating my words, I guess, and and then they did, sub on Cherky near the end. They took out Desiree Doué, who I thought had an okay game, but he wasn't too significant for the goals at the very least, in my opinion. But then in extra time, at the 95th minute, Ibrahim Mbaye scores for Senegal, and I'm thinking, oh shoot, the game might be back on, folks. But then just as I was thinking that, just as people were still celebrating the Senegalese goal, Kylian Mbappe just takes the ball the other way and scores. And that just killed the game. That was the end of it. 3-1. I would say based on the performance, at least of the first half, I'm not sure that score was deserved, but it is what it is. Mbappe is Mbappe. So, and whenever he goes to World Cups, he always pops off. So what can you do, right? But this is actually still a really good performance, I think, from Senegal, even despite the loss to France. But again, this is France, right? This is one of the top 3 teams in the world, a strong favorite to win the entire damn World Cup. But this was a good performance from Senegal still, if you ask me. But now let's move on to the other 2 countries in Group I, which were, of course, Iraq and Norway. And I think what I want to say is that this scoreline honestly really flatters Norway. I watched the entire thing because I am a Norway supporter, but this was really, really back and forth. And in my opinion, if there is one word to describe this match from a Norwegian perspective, it will be uneasy. Iraq really, really kept Norway on their feet. It really made them uncomfortable. They had to play outside the comfort zone. They had to play with possession, which is something that they're not used to doing because usually they're playing higher rated European opponents or stronger opponents who play a kind of European style. And, Iraq are just not a team like that. They like to let the opposition have the possession, and Norway just don't play well and in circumstances like that. But we did get an early-ish goal from Erling Haaland. This was kind of hard fought, honestly. It was really, really back and forth despite the scoreline here, I think. Assist from David Muller-Wolf. But then, 10 minutes later, Ayman Hussein gives an insane equalizer. Like, it was outside of the box, I swear. Like, I don't know if it was Ayman Hussein who scored it, or rather, was it Ayman Hussein who kicked the ball from outside the box, or was it Al-Amari? It might have been Al-Amari, to be honest, but yeah. Ayman Hussein scores the first goal, and it is just an absolutely ridiculous shot from outside of the box. Yeah, I think it was Al-Amari who did that. It just goes in. Ayman Hussein heads the ball into the net. And it is 1-1, and I'm sat here thinking, oh shoot, is another Qatar versus Switzerland going to happen again? Fortunately, that didn't happen, although the circumstances under which the second goal happened was kind of funny. The ball was being passed by an Iraqi player back to the goalkeeper. What was his name? Hassan. And Hassan was just taking a little bit too long to send the ball away to the other side, and Erling Haaland just runs up to him as he is about to make that pass, takes the ball, and just scores it. It is, I would say, the funniest goal of the entire World Cup that I have seen to date, but yeah, that is honestly just down to Hassan, who I think that was absolutely a stinker for him. But yeah, that was the first half. 2-1. I think this was a really back and forth game, back and forth. You get what I mean. I also don't think Arsnes did really that much, but yeah, he was subbed off later. Torsvets came on. Antonio Nusa was okay. I would have liked to see him do a bit more, but he was making runs, even if they didn't necessarily result in anything. He was subbed on for Shellerup, who I kind of have a sense is kind of his bestie in the squad now, although they occupy the same position in the team, kind of a left winger type thing. And then in the 76th minute, I think this was a set piece from Odegaard, and then Østegård actually is the one to put it into the ball, put it into the back of the net. And then at this point, you're thinking, okay, the game is surely done, right? But no, Iraq was still attacking, and at the end, it was at the very, very end, 6 minutes added. In the 96th minute, it was a mess of bodies in the middle. I think it was like a free kick or something like that. And amidst the mess of bodies, the goal was initially given, I think, to Torsvets right here. But in the end, it was given as an own goal by Ayman Hussein, which must really suck, right? This was the one game where maybe you could try to get something out of it, and then your own man scores a goal for the opposing team in a 3-goal loss, right? This definitely sucks for Iraq, but again, I don't think anyone expected anything but a conclusive win for Norway. But if you ignore the scoreline, this was actually a much more back-to-back, end-to-end game than you would expect from that scoreline. So yeah, that was an uncomfortable game. Hopefully Norway will be able to do better against France and Senegal, but especially France, actually. We'll have to see what happens, though. And obviously, Mbappe is Mbappe, and he could absolutely run up the score against Norway in the second half, just like he did against Senegal. We'll have to see what happens. But another decisive result we have in Group J this time was Algeria 3-0. Argentina 3-0 Algeria, where Messi scores his first ever World Cup hat-trick against Algeria. And I watched this match. kind of on and off because I wasn't super invested in the result either way. But people really blamed sort of Lucas Zidane at the end of this. But honestly, of the 3 goals, I think the only one that you can conclusively say was his fault was the second one. The first goal, it was just an absolute rocket. I'll be honest. Actually, this was funny because one goal that wasn't mentioned here was actually from Lionel Messi. I think it was like 4th or 6th minute or something like that. But that was ruled offside. But then soon after that, Shaibi also scored for Algeria, but that was also ruled offside. But after that, Lionel Messi scores. Rodrigo de Paul makes an assist, and it goes through like 3 defenders or something like that. And could Lucas Zidane have saved that? Yes, but it was going with such force that I think he was just a little bit intimidated, and also it's just Lionel Messi, right? So yeah, it wasn't great. They were down 1-0 pretty early, but they did manage to hold until halftime, only 1-0. But in the second half, the second goal was so stupid, from the Algerian perspective at least. Basically, Lucas Zidane made a save, but then he couldn't keep the ball in his hands. It rolled out, and then Lionel Messi takes the ball and puts in the second one. And like I said, this was a really stupid goalkeeper mistake. He is I think Lucas Zidane is one of the weaklings of this, but this, I think, is the only goal that I can conclusively say that, okay, he was the one who could have prevented it from happening. Because the third goal as well, it was also another really hard to save one, to be honest. So yeah, I wouldn't put too much blame on Lucas Zidane. It was a bit of a stinker, but it wasn't his own stinker. Like, ultimately, you don't want to be relying on your goalkeeper to be the hero of the game, right? If that is the modus operandi, then something has gone seriously wrong with your defense. And people talk about also like how the fact that they brought on Haj Musa instead of Riyad Mahrez, and I'll be honest, I don't think that really made too big of a difference. But yeah, I think actually, if there is one bright spot in this, obviously, it is Ibrahim Maza. He was dribbling around Lionel Messi himself. So, yeah, he was doing great personally, but his his individual talent was not able to really save Algeria from being destroyed, frankly, by Lionel Messi. So, yeah, I think the other members of the squad, of the Argentinian squad, did okay. I personally felt like McAllister was a little bit absent, but yeah, other than that, these guys did okay. But obviously, this is mostly just Lionel Messi being Lionel Messi. So yeah, there's not really much else to say except, again, Ibrahim Maza, really good, and I think he should remain as a starter for Algeria, unlike, say, Haj Musa. Well, I don't know, maybe Haj Musa would work for the other games, but definitely not against Lionel freaking Messi. So let's move on to the other 2 countries in Group J, where we had a similarly one-sided result, although again, I did not watch this, so because it was like the 12 p.m. I was awake all night, dude. I was not about to stay up for this game. All respect to Jordan, of course. But my understanding is that this scoreline really flatters Austria. They were actually quite uncomfortable for many parts of the game. And the Arnautovic penalty at the end was also kind of controversial, according to my understanding. Again, I didn't watch the match. I'm just going off of what other people have said based on what they felt after watching the match. But yeah, Schmidt, scores pretty early on, just before the hydration break, and then Ali Owan scores one for Jordan, and it was actually 1-1 for a while. There was a goal, but that was ruled out by Arnautovic. Some people thought it wasn't a foul. I'm not entirely sure because I just haven't watched the match. And then, an own goal for Al Arab, and I'm not sure what happened there. But, yeah, and then Arnautovic got given a penalty in the 102nd minute. So yeah, this was very, very last minute, and like people have mentioned, this scoreline really flatters Jordan. Really flatters Austria. They were constantly under pressure by Jordan, and they didn't really generate too many chances, or rather, they weren't able to convert too many chances despite having more possession. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens when they play, say Algeria, for example. That is going to be an interesting game, I think. Austria versus Algeria will probably determine who gets second place in the group, but of course, Austria currently has the advantage. We'll have to see what happens in that match. And finally, let's get on to the 4 matches that happened this morning as of recording this. Starting with Portugal 1, DR Congo 1. Now, this was definitely a surprising result, I think, to a lot of people. Even I, who really liked DR Congo, I followed DR Congo throughout qualifying. Even I thought that they would either struggle to score or at least let in a few goals from the Portuguese side. But man, this was not a good Portuguese side at all. I'm just going to be very honest. They had a few chances, but despite the high amount of possession, 75%, they didn't really generate that many good opportunities. There was one really early goal from João Neves, which was interesting because João Neves isn't necessarily known for scoring goals. They even literally said that on the broadcast I was watching. João Neves actually scored for Portugal pretty early on. It was an assist from Pedro Neto. It was a set piece. And yeah, that was the first goal of the game, but then they didn't really generate too much. At the very last kick of the first half, you've got a really good pass. It is also a set piece, by the way, from Masuaku, and then it comes into the middle. Yohan Wissa comes up perfectly and bangs it in the back of the net, and they are level. Portugal and DR Congo 1-1, and that is pretty much the end of the game. And honestly, if you've watched the game at all, I feel like Congolese people will have come away thinking they could have won this, and they absolutely could have done. There were several chances that they created that they just kind of flubbed. I can't remember exactly who it was. I think it was Bakambu. Bakambu actually flubbed a few chances. But for me, aside from the goal scorer, Wissa, of course, I think the man of the match for me for Congo has got to be Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka just made some really, really good passes, and he was running all up and down the pitch. Bakambu, again, like he flubbed a bunch of his shots, but he was also pretty effective as well. And, Ronaldo, the less said, the better. But I will say, watch successful. In the second half alone, because I wasn't able to make it home before the second half, he missed 2 shots, and God, I relish in that in that expression of his when he manages to miss a shot. It is just, it's just so delicious. So, yeah, the less said about him, the better. But yeah, if you ask me right now, who's the GOAT, Ronaldo or Messi, it is 100%, 1,000,000% Messi. Come on now. The other guys, some of them were okay. Cancelo, I thought, was alright. Vitinha didn't really do too much, if I'm being honest. Cancelo was alright, though, for Portugal. But they really have to look at their strategy and stuff like that. Roberto Martinez needs to stop starting Ronaldo, if I'm being honest, although I don't think they'll ever do that. But this was a really good result for Congo, who, might I remind you, when they last participated as Zaire, they didn't score a single goal, and they were destroyed like 9-0 or something in some of these games. But for the first game to draw against DR Congo, for DR Congo to draw against Portugal, that is excellent. Like, look at this. They were generating more chances, more shots than Portugal. Despite having 20% possession, they had 6 shots and 2 on target. and I think that just really goes to show how wasteful Portugal was being with their possession. They had the ball, but they weren't really doing much with it. And some people talked about how after that first goal, Portugal actually generated zero SG on target. So yeah, it was a bad day for Portugal. Obviously, it's not the end for them. Like with Spain, they can still probably top this group if they manage to stat pad well enough against Panama and wrong group. If they can manage to get something out of like Uzbekistan and Colombia, but that could be hard as well for Portugal to do that, especially against Colombia. But we'll have to see. But speaking of those two countries, let's check out this game. This game ended, as of recording this, about 6 hours ago, I would say. And this was actually a really close game, I would say. The problem was that Uzbekistan was not able to really capitalize on their chances. They had a few chances, but they weren't able to step up to the occasions, let's just say. Whereas Colombia is, of course, very seasoned at the World Cup. A lot of these guys have played in the previous World Cup. The first goal was scored by Munoz. This was off of an assist from Luis Diaz. It was a really good assist from Luis Diaz, to be honest. But Munoz sees the ball coming in from Luis Diaz, just runs forward, puts the goal at the back of the net, and that is 1-0 at halftime. And then the second goal actually came from Uzbekistan, and it was a little bit chaotic, to be honest, because you had someone, I can't remember who it was, but they were sending in a shot. An Uzbek player was sending in a shot from the side. It hit the crossbar, I think, or something like that. But somehow it bounced perfectly out towards the players. And then somehow it just landed perfectly in the path of Faizulayev. And Faizulayev scores Uzbekistan's first ever goal at the World Cup. And they are 1-1, but it wasn't to be for long because Luis Diaz scored another one in the 65th minute. I think it was... No, it wasn't a set piece, but it was still a pretty decisive goal from Luis Diaz. And then very late in the game, you've got one from Hamilton Campas as well. And I think this was a set piece actually. And that was the game. It looked I think that scoreline flatters Colombia a little bit. I think they were definitely under pressure from Uzbekistan, but I think they would have wanted. Uzbekistan would have wanted a better result from this, but it is still a respectable result. I mean, Colombia is literally 13th in the world according to FIFA, but we'll see what they are able to do in the rest of the group. But I hate to say it, but I'm not sure they can get anything against Portugal or DR Congo, and they may well have to be grouped with 0 points. Like, honestly, if they can get 1 point against Portugal, that would be massive. But I don't see them getting anything against DR Congo. The Congolese defense is really, really tight, and I just don't see Uzbekistan getting past them, unfortunately. But this is still a really strong showing for them for their first ever World Cup. And now we move on to the last two games of the first match day, and we start with an absolute banger of an all-European match. England 4, Croatia 2. Now, this was a really good result for England, I think, and the sense I got from watching this was that Croatia just kind of ran out of steam in the second half. And, obviously a lot of the the goals, a lot of them were scored in the first half or shortly after the first half. But I think Croatia just really started to run out of steam. Harry Kane got a penalty early on. I honestly didn't catch that. I hadn't opened the stream yet, but Kane had scored a penalty early on. I think that penalty was actually committed by Modric, which was kind of unusual because he doesn't usually do that kind of thing. But Kane got a penalty, and then in the 36th minute, Baturina scored for Croatia. It was absolute golazo right now. Like, go and watch the highlights. It is an absolutely insane goal from Baturina. I had never even heard of this person before watching this match, but that goal was absolutely just really impressive stuff. But then Harry Kane actually put them back in the lead in the 42nd minute. This was an assist from Declan Rice. I think this was a set piece. And then at the very, very last kick of the first half, you got another equalizer from Croatia. This was from Musa this time. This was, they were going into this at halftime 2-2. But then, after halftime, at the start of the second half, Jude Bellingham actually really just gave it a good run and just scored another goal for England. And England were just not, Croatia were just not able to really respond. They swapped out a bunch of guys. Modric actually came off relatively early. Vuskovic came off as well. Musa, Baturina, Pasalic. And then near the end, you can see here, they actually subbed on Rashford for Gordon. They actually had Anthony Gordon playing for most of the match. But then they subbed on Rashford at the 72nd minute. And then in the 85th minute, a ball from Saka goes into Rashford, and again he just makes a good run for it. And again, I just get the sense that near the end of the match, Croatia were just being outrun by England. Their fresh legs were not able to compete with the fresh legs of the England squad, and I think that again just goes to show the wealth in the depth of the England squad, that they can put on someone like Marcus Rashford at the 72nd minute and Bukayo freaking Saka, Mark Gahey. These are guys that any national team in the world would want in their starting 11, never mind the bench. So yeah, I think it is a really good demonstration of kind of the depth of the England team, of the England squad, and how they were able to use that to their advantage against a side, against a rather tired Croatian side, let's just say. And, is this due for Croatia? No, it's not. They can absolutely get a result against Ghana and Panama. But, this is, I think, maybe a sign that England could be going far in this World Cup, and Croatia might not be able to get quite as far. They would obviously love to get to the semifinals as well, and depending on the draw, they may well be able to do that. But I think the current estimation, based on this match alone, if you want to make any sort of extrapolations, is that that might not be happening. Maybe they'll be stopped at the quarterfinals or something like that. We don't really know, but England are looking really, really hot. Thomas Tuchel's tactics are working so far. And let's move on to the final match of Matchday 1. Actually, technically, chronologically, the last match was Uzbekistan-Colombia, but the match before that, we had Ghana 1, Panama 0. Actually, I lied. I think this was actually the last match. Was it? No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Sorry. I'm getting a little delirious. I'm sorry. Ghana 1, Panama 0. The football in this match was so bad that I actually went out to have breakfast in the second half. Around the 80th minute, I went out to have breakfast, and then as I was eating, I looked at my phone. I looked at FODMOB on my phone, and I was like, oh shoot, 1-0? Yeah, it was 1-0. Literally the very, very last kick of the game. This was the match was just not fun to watch. It was a really tough watch, I'll be honest. I tried to watch this because this will probably determine who has a chance of getting third place and maybe going to knockouts. I looked at this. It was just not a fun match to watch. But in the very last last kick of the game, you've got an assist coming in from Brandon Thomas Asante, which came into Caleb Urenki, who also scored in some other previous matches for Ghana, I think. But it came into Caleb Urenki. He takes the ball perfectly. Boom. That's the last kick of the game. Well, it really wasn't, because they it was 6 minutes added, but they played it until 99th, and actually I think it was someone from the Panama side. They almost gave I think, I'm not sure who it was. I think one of the goalkeepers actually almost gave Panama an equalizer here, but it didn't happen. Someone got yellow carded in the 99th minute, and that was the game. 1-0 with one goal at the 95th minute for Ghana, and that puts them on 3 points right now, so they can hopefully try to go for qualification to the knockout round. We'll have to see what happens, but that was the game, and that was Matchday 1. Like I said, I haven't covered Spain versus Cape Verde yet, but I will talk about that in a separate video. I'm not really gonna make predictions for Matchday 1, Matchday 2, etc. I just can't really be bothered, if I'm being honest. But these were some really interesting games, some really surprising results, I would say. Iberia being held to draws by African sides. And weirdly, the one African side that won was actually Ghana. Norway, they looked good, but on paper, but actually they were really struggling, in my opinion. At least against Iraq, they might be able to do better against someone like France. But yeah, Algeria did not look great. This was a really crazy match day, and you'll have to see what other craziness awaits us for match day 2. So I'll come back for that when that concludes, and that is going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed my commentary on match day 1 of FIFA World Cup 2026. If you did, like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming content about the World Cup and future content about various other things as well, including more football content, of course. And I'll see you next time.